MSPs in place who can help you develop your ideas and submit an application to Horizon Europe. Moving on to talk about Fusion now. Traditionally, Fusion was composed of two aspects, the Commercialization Voucher Program and the Technology Development Program. However, this year in 2021, we are expanding the Fusion portfolio to include a broader range of support measures for technologies, services, products that are at different stages of technology maturity. In fact, we piloted last year, and now this is part of the Fusion program. We have the Research Excellence program that focuses on the bottom-up, early-stage basic research aspects of your ideas. The Commercialization Voucher program is still there. It has been simplified and it has been shortened, but the scope remains unchanged, and that acts as a precursor to obtaining funding for research under the Technology Development Program, which again has largely remained unchanged this year, although we will be launching a new strand of that, which I'll speak about a bit later. We also provide support on so-called optional vouchers. We're planning eventually to have a more market-ready type of oriented program. And we also have top-down research thematic funding programs that we will launch on a yearly basis. This is the Gantt chart of where we are in terms of the timing of the calls. The Research Excellence program will shortly be launched in March as soon as we get the approvals. The Commercialization Voucher program will be in May. Technology Development Program will be in March as well, but one needs to remember that you need to pass through the Commercialization Voucher Program first for that. And then the other two programs which we're working on will be launched in September and in April. More about that in a bit. So firstly, to start off with the first aspect of the Fusion portfolio, this is the Research Excellence Program. Who can apply? As private entities, you can apply and participate and obtain funding on your own. There's no need for a collaboration for this program. The scope is bottom-up early stage research. So really it is fundamental research and industrial research at early sort of maturity, at early stage ideas, resulting in groundbreaking discoveries and innovation. The funding available is up to 50,000. These are usually one-year projects. And for private entities, you would go through the de minimis regulation route in terms of obtaining funding. This means that the eligible costs are quite beneficial when it comes to personnel costs, specialized equipment, consumables, travel costs, subcontracting. What is great about this program is the aid intensity, because we offer 90% aid intensity on eligible costs for the private entities. So the co-financing is only 10% that is required over here under this de minimis route. I'm putting up the TRL scale over here. Now, technology readiness levels are a measure of technology maturity, sort of starting from 1 till about 9. 1 is when you first have the idea, when it's pretty much a concept at the very, very early stages, and 9 is when it is on the market. So this research, as you can see, of the Research Excellence Program focuses on the basic research surrounding TRL1 to TRL4. So typically, your idea, your technology would be at the maximum validated within a non-representative environment, let's say a lab environment, if you do get to TRL4. Where can you go after having benefited from this program? You can certainly tap into the Commercialization Voucher Program by applying for that. Or eventually there will be a fast-track research program that you'll be able to apply for later in the year. So now moving on to the Commercialization Voucher Program, this is not a program where you would undertake research per se, but this is all about testing of your research ideas prior to actually engaging in further research, engaging in further commitment and investment in research. You can apply as a private entity on your own again, and the funding available is up to around 20,000 euros on the de minimis route for private entities. What actually happens over here, this is a feasibility type of program whereby it has now been simplified into 2 stages: intellectual property checks and feasibility and commercialization checks. So here, essentially, we'll be pairing you up with approved service providers who will engage in feasibility study activities for you when it comes to intellectual property, market research, for example, and you would pay the service providers directly and then get a reimbursement from us up to an aid intensity of 75%. You can then move over to apply for the Technology Development Program. This is where research can be carried out, in this case, in a collaborative environment. A consortium would need to be formed between you as a private entity, as well as a public entity, whether that is a ministry, for example, or a governmental entity, or in fact, a public research and knowledge dissemination organization, such as the University of Malta and MCST, for example. The scope here is collaborative research projects between 1 to 3 years in duration, leading to innovative solutions. The funding available is up to €300,000. There are two routes for private entities. One is the traditional de minimis route, which I mentioned earlier, or also we are looking at a general block exemption regulation route as well. What you get in terms of eligible costs, the line items are mentioned over there and are pretty much the same as I discussed in the Research Excellence Program. However, how much you get will really depend on the state aid route that you go for. But for de minimis, for example, again, it's 75% aid intensity for private entities. The research you do over here is applied research. So taking those early stage discoveries in the laboratory environment and really moving on to advanced prototypes in operational environment up to TRL 7. You can then move on to benefit from additional commercialization vouchers, such as intellectual property registration, business plans, and investors meetings. Soon, we will also have a light version of this where you would be able to apply on your own as a single entity for shorter projects and for funding up to about 100 or 150,000. This will be launched in September and is a faster track route whereby you could essentially bypass the commercialization voucher program and go straight into research for the more fast track technology developments that you may require. Again, the TRL levels will be the same as TDP, and you can still benefit from the additional commercialization voucher program vouchers. One of the special programs that we'll be launching this year is the Infectious Diseases Program. Unfortunately, I cannot give you too much detail on this because it is still being developed and it is still to be approved. However, I can tell you certainly the private sector will be able to benefit from this. The TRL scale, the technology maturity is quite varied, so we're looking at basic research right up until TRL 7. And we are foreseeing a broad range of challenges associated with infectious diseases in terms of treatment and management, resource resilience, health system strengthening. Coming to the end of my presentation, I would encourage you to register on the Plumtree platform, which is a platform which we administer, but provides you with the advantage of knowing about research and innovation opportunities, not just those by MCST, but by other organizations as well. In the top right-hand corner, you will see a link to register, and this will really help you keep up to date with all the R&I opportunities attributed to your needs within the private sector. Also, I would encourage you to join our mailing list. The top right-hand corner includes an icon whereby you can register for our mailing list on our main website. So to conclude, I have given you an overview of the Fusion program, the 4 strands that we have at the moment under the Fusion program. And now I will be passing over to the next speaker who will be delivering a case study presentation on their participation in the Commercialization Voucher Program and the Technology Development Program. Thank you.
Thanks, James. We can immediately move on to Engineer Spiteri. Before proceeding, just because we've received a question already. Yes, we will be circulating the presentations, especially the ones related to the funding streams offered by MCST and Malta Enterprise after the session. We'll be circulating all those who registered through our system. Or is yours, Matthew?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Matthew Spiteri. I'm an engineer and managing director at Altern Limited. We're a company mainly focused on sustainability and renewable energy. We've been for the past 10 years implementing various projects with three main focus: research, which tends to drive our future innovation and future products; services and technologies, the end solutions to our clients. We've worked a lot in the area of sustainability and energy auditing and energy management, which gives us the possibility to acquire know-how and knowledge from companies on what is actually needed and what kind of implementations could be considered. We very much try to create innovative projects. We've implemented the first large-scale solar car park in Malta. We're currently implementing the largest building integrated photovoltaic plant again with Malta. And we've got a lot of development happening in the area of batteries related to home use and electromobility. And we, through also an internal research project, we've implemented one of the first cogeneration systems around 7-8 years ago, and we're currently co-developing a small-scale cogeneration system. Today I'll be focusing a bit on LED lighting and how we've used our knowledge together with the help of MCST to implement some of our research projects. We tend to look at things in an engineering way through simulations, trying to simulate what kind of lighting is required to be able to implement nice, interesting projects. It was only fitting to showcase some of our projects actually at Esplora under the realm of MCST, where we again try to come up with quite some innovative implementations. We are a company focused not solely on research, but also on creating products that can be commercialized. And together with our partners, we actually manufacture a range of products locally, a range of LED products locally, all happening in a near carbon neutral building to ensure sustainability across the whole life cycle of the product. One of our main areas of expertise is in fact sport lighting. This is one of our projects in Frankfurt, Germany, and research has actually driven quite a number of our products. One of our main products being the Novlet sport lighting series, which was developed through a research, through diffusion funding, through MCST. Our goals at the time, back in 2014, was to create a product that is low in energy consumption, has very efficient thermal management, is modular in the way it's built, so we can create easily scalability, and having smart controls. We've partnered with Sport Malta as our, let's say, implementation partner, and together through the Fusion R&D&I program and the help of MCST, we started through, let's say, a 2-3 year program of implementing this research project. We started off the project in 2014 with some initial internal research. It tends to be how we typically start off, no real funding, but more of an internal reinvestment of our resources to develop this, let's say, the conceptualization of the project. In 2016, so between 14 and 16, we passed through the Commercialization Voucher program known as the CVP, which led us to starting off the TDP, the Technology Development Program, through the Fusion program, where we acquired a funding of around 200,000 ourselves together with Sport Malta to implement our research project. A year later, we had our first prototypes, which we started implementing in different Sport Malta locations through an online testing that is still ongoing up to today. The project was completed between 2018 2019, and as I've explained, we are still running through a number of measurements on the implemented projects in order to ensure continual development and monitoring of the project. And this created what we're calling the Novlet Sport Lighting Series, which is a modular, high efficiency lighting specifically focused for sport applications, and completely designed and developed and manufactured here locally in Malta. We've got some implementations, for example, at the Kirkop Sports Complex, where we've changed a number of their light units into this LED lighting, and actually we've managed to achieve as much as 65% reduction in energy consumption using this product. We are currently working on what we're calling in Novlet 2.0, which is basically using the know-how and knowledge acquired through this project to develop ancillary products, not specifically related to the sport realm, but using the basic components and the basic know-how acquired through this project. So this is a very clear way of how such a research project created, let's say, a range of products, and this research is still ongoing. A second project we've been working on for the past 2 years is what we call Shape Lamp, which is a brand within the Altern product range. We've developed a unique online software which you can find on shapelamp.com, which gives the opportunity basically to anyone across the globe, really of any age and knowledge, to be able to design their very own light fitting using a 3D modeling online software, order the actual product and have it manufactured, customized to their size and shape, basically. We bring in what we call the democratization of services, in this case of lighting design. We use lean manufacturing and rapid manufacturing techniques and energy efficient and upskilled products in the whole, let's say, Shape Lamp brand to create some nice and innovative products. As I've explained, we use rapid manufacturing and a mix of rapid manufacturing and actually artisan work to create lighting units. This is what a final product would looks like. These are products that are already commercialized and are already available on shapelamp.com. What we've done now is we've worked closely with a number of partners, in this case, the Ministry of Education, specifically Design and Technology Learning Center, to apply, and we're currently ongoing another fusion project in which we're focusing on pushing the Shape Lamp know-how and the Shape Lamp technology to new boundaries, basically, using 3D printing technologies, innovative materials and new LED lighting to be able to expand, let's say, the more symmetric lighting production to basically no real limits in shape. We're currently halfway through this fusion project, and our aim is to expand the platform further, create a unique manufactured product locally in Malta, the manufacturing machinery, and then an educational platform to give the opportunity to people of different ages to tap into, let's say, the technological side of education, and to create spaces, or give the opportunity to more people to create spaces that are nice to use and, at the end of the day, energy efficient. We've been lucky enough to find great help from the MCST team to implement and help us apply for such funding. And then I invite everyone to look into the opportunities offered for such funding applications to be able to turn, ideas and maybe new concepts into reality to really grow the R&I industry here in Malta. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Thanks for these insights. Before we move on to the next section of today's event, I would also like to remind everyone present that the session is being recorded, and we will then be making the recording of today's event available on our social media. We now move on to another section of today's event, and I wish to introduce Mr. Karl Herrera, Chief Officer in Incentives Development, Valuation and Monitoring at Malta Enterprise, who will be explaining in greater detail the Malta Enterprise Research and Development Program. Mr. Herrera will then be followed by Engineer Lino Farrugia, Product Development Manager at PowerSwitch, which forms part of the Toll Automation Limited, who will also take us through their practical experience in applying for this program, and also as a case study in relation to the Malta Enterprise Program. All right, the floor is yours.
Okay, just a second. So I put this full screen. Okay. So I will be taking you through a number of our measures that are intended to support research, development and innovation today. Some of the aspects are relatively new and not 100% public, but they will be available in the coming days, and I will explain the details as we go along. I do hope to keep in time, so considering everything, I'll have a bit of a rush to say so. So we have a toolbox of incentives. Not all of them are specifically for research and development. Some of them are very specific, like the Exploring Research Grant, the Research and Development 2020 scheme, and the patent box, and I will be focusing on those in my presentation. But we also have other schemes that we've used to help research projects and companies which are focused on research. Specifically, in very recent times, in the past, I would say 12 to 18 months, we have been engaged with a number of startups who are very research focused, who are developing new solutions related to AI, biotech, and fintech. And for those practical companies being in the startup phase, it's easier to support them through startup measures, where we can even provide further aid when they're innovative startups, innovative enterprises, than the actual R&D measures. But as I said, today I will be focusing on the R&D measures. One aspect that we do provide, and I feel is very important to communicate, is that we provide an option, a simplified application form, where businesses can submit details of their research project without having to provide the full application. Well, technically, the pre-proposal stage is a stage where we only ask details of the research project itself. We don't ask financials, we don't ask potential market penetration, just the research project itself. And we test if we feel that that project can be considered under our schemes. It's a very simple application which can be completed without having to go through the full application process. Following that, what happens is that we give a recommendation to the applicant whether he should go ahead, or maybe there should be some changes before he can go ahead with the full application process. So the first scheme I would like to maybe delve a bit into is the Exploring Research Grant. It was previously known or named as the R&D Feasibility Grant. We've rebranded it as Exploring Research Grant. It practically is there to help companies, to help businesses to review their project, their research proposals, before actually undertaking the research itself. So the intention is that through this, we can help a company, a business, review the scientific and technological concepts behind that research project, conduct searches, identify partners, review intellectual property available, other knowledge that might be of relevance, and measure the risks and potential of the research. What will this lead to? So it's a feasibility study. It's not a business feasibility study. It's a feasibility study of the research project itself. On this scheme, we can support a number of costs, including wages, the internal wages of researchers and technical personnel doing the research and the feasibility of the study, testing the feasibility of the research, contractual research and other technical knowledge that might need to be purchased in order to conduct the preliminary phase before actually undertaking the research. Obviously, when we talk about technical knowledge and subcontract and consultancy and other similar services, we can only support them if they are sourced from outside unrelated parties. And any other overheads that might need to be covered in relation to the study itself. So it could be materials or supplies that might be needed for some initial testing before actually undertaking the research project. So the funding available goes up to 50,000 euros. The funding depends on the size of the enterprise. It can go up to 70% in the case of a small enterprise. In the case of a large enterprise, the funding is a maximum of 50% of the eligible costs. The scheme will be available in the coming weeks, as I said. We expect to receive applications at least 8 weeks in advance before the projects, the research feasibility starts, to allow us enough time to approve before the start date. And the scheme is intended to be available until the 31st of October 2023. So that was the first scheme I would like to present. The second, I think, which is the focus of our R&D initiatives, is the Research and Development 2020. It's a continuation of a previous scheme we had, which closed at the end of 2019 due to changing in state aid regulations. Practically, we support industrial research and experimental development. So we do not cover fundamental research. So all our projects have to have, let's say, an industry applicable objective in the end. So it might be a wide objective which might be applicable to multiple products, services, and processes, or a specific objective which might be applicable to only one product or one service. Then we also provide additional support when the project is collaborative. It could be collaborative between business and a knowledge-based institution like a university, or between enterprises themselves, or maybe a cross-border between multiple European states. As regards to what we can fund under this measure, we can fund the wages of the researchers for the time they are engaged in the project, the cost of equipment and instruments. Now, in this case, the cost of materials and instruments, if they are to be used beyond the scope of the project, it's only the depreciation for the time they're using the project that can be supported. Any contractual research, technical knowledge, patents that might be required to carry out the research project, and any other overheads, operating expenses, etc. related to the project. The aid can be provided both as a grant and as a tax credit. In the case of a grant, the application would need to be received and approved before the research project actually starts. In the case of a tax credit, the application has to be submitted within 6 months from the start of the project. So the tax credit option might be more attractive to those companies who have a reduced timeline, so they can't really apply before the actual start of the project because of the way they are structured. In that case, there is the tax credit option. As regards to funding, the funding can range between 25% to 80%. It depends on the size of the company applying, the type of research, whether it's industrial or experimental, and whether there is collaborative. So depending on those parameters, the applicable aid intensity would have to be applied to the particular project. The last measure I would like to mention, and I say mention briefly because it is a fiscal measure and it might be a bit too much to go into the details. But the main difference in this measure is that this is not a measure based on cost principally, but it's based on income. So the advantage here is income related to intellectual property, which is similar to a patent. So the other schemes we've mentioned are based on reducing the cost of a company in undertaking research. The patent box provides an incentive on the income a company receives from intellectual property generated from research. And what can be placed in a patent box are patents, which is clear to name is patent box, other IP assets having similar characteristics as patents, other assets like orphan drug registrations, genetic material, which are typically not registered at patent, but are registered through different sources. Software, but let's say not copyrighted software, but software which is the result of research and which addresses a scientific or technological uncertainty. So it's not any software, but very specific software development projects. All these can be placed in a patent box. In case of small enterprises, it's also possible to place in a patent box IP which is not registered as a patent, but which can be confirmed through a patent attorney that could have been registered. In those cases, it's also possible to put that into the patent box. And the advantage here is that there's a deduction, a tax deduction on the income received from the income generated from the knowledge in the patent box, which is calculated as 95% of the qualifying expenditure over the total expenditure of that income. The difference between qualifying and total expenditure, the qualifying expenditure is the eligible expenditure which is incurred by the company itself and which is subcontracted to unrelated third parties. The total expenditure will include any part of the research which has been subcontracted to related parties, and any IP which might have been purchased to conclude or to actually undertake that research. So practically just a bit over 10 minutes. That's I think the most three relevant schemes that we can provide currently in the area of research and development. Thank you.
And thanks, Karl. I'm pretty sure that there will be then questions from the audience in relation to the phase of the scheme. I'll immediately pass on the floor to Engineer Lino Farrugia to, of course, showcase his case study as part of DOLD Limited. Lino, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to, first of all, introduce myself and my company. I'm Lino Farrugia, as we heard, product manager at DOLD Industrial Automation. I've been working with DOLD for the last more than 20 years. And basically, we're a subsidiary of a company based in Germany. And the section where I work for, we specialize in power electronics, where we design and put into production products where, well, these products complement products that are being manufactured in Germany. Know-how that the Germans do not have. So it was a win-win situation. We managed to get funds from the parent company to set up a department to design and produce these products. Now, how this project came about? Well, market research has shown that motors, induction motors that are put on the market in the EU have to have a certain level of efficiency, basically to reduce energy and reduce CO2. But the downside of this strategy was that these motors produce a high inrush current when switched. So this can create problems to the network and even the switchgear. So obviously when we saw this, we could see there's an opportunity where we can improve our product, and we can develop a product where we can suppress this inrush current by developing a motor starter. So we started thinking about it, and obviously when we came to the financial part of it, we discovered that to test properly this product, we needed quite a huge investment, mostly in the electromagnetic compatibility testing. Basically, the EMC testing, it's a requirement, firstly, to put it on the market, because you need to use the CE mark, and that the CE mark, there's a list of regulations that you have to follow, product standards that you have to follow. And secondly, you have to make sure that the product behaves properly without fail under a lot of circumstances, environmental influences like radio frequencies and lightning and other influences that might affect the operation of the product. On top of that, we had to invest in we call it a dynamometer. It's a programmable braking system where we can test the motor at different loads to simulate real life situations. Obviously, these equipment were quite substantial for a small company like ours, and again, there was a bit of uncertainty about the final outcome of the project, and it was very hard to get the funds from the parent company. So at first, okay, we started seeking assistance through a grant. At first, we were a bit hesitant to seek financial help through some sort of grant scheme, since we were under the impression that it required a lot of effort to apply and administer. For such a small company like ours, this would have been a big issue. But luckily, when we inquired at Malta Enterprise about such assistance, we were pleasantly surprised to discover that tailor-made schemes for research and development were already in place. So subsequently, meetings were held between us and Malta Enterprise, and basically to iron out any misconceptions on our behalf and to chart the way forward to apply for such a grant. The Malta Enterprise publication, which we were given, I think it was called Incentives Guidelines, was very helpful and answered most of the questions that arose when we started delving into the incentive scheme. We were assigned Malta Enterprise officer, where we communicated regularly, guiding us through various stages. So from submitting our proposal, submitting our full R&D application, and up to the point where we received the letter of acceptance. And this didn't take a long time. It was a matter of few months where we received the letter of acceptance. Well, the guidance and the help offered by the officer was very useful and made the task much easier. Even claiming, we find out that claiming for each tranche was found to be straightforward, and also the claim form and progress reports were manageable and easily filled. Now, I'd like to talk about briefly on the equipment that we bought to complete the project. As I said earlier, we bought this programmable braking system or load system for the motor, and we wanted it to be fully automated. In this respect, we bought software called LabVIEW, where this gives us the facility to communicate with the equipment, take measurements, we did data logging for analysis, so this was a fully programmable test system that we had to develop before we even started developing the product. On the same lines, we had to build a EMC test room where we could simulate various interference, either coming from lightning or from somebody's using a welding set next to you. So we had to simulate that. And then there was the RF section. We radiated, we showered the product with radio frequency up to 2.7 gigahertz. And we also injected radio frequency on the cables that are connected to the product to induce these disturbances. So these are equipment that it was very useful for the successful outcome of the project. The project was, technically speaking, was very successful. We managed to get what we started for. The equipment behaved very well. And well, basically, to keep it brief, what we have gained from this project, besides developing a new product range, we gained a vast amount of knowledge while developing this new product, and gave us also the potential for new product spin-offs. We have also increased the company's capabilities in testing. So this equipment obviously will be used for future product developments projects. Furthermore, with these new testing capabilities, we can offer testing services to our parent company with added revenues for our company. So all in all, this was a win-win situation. It helped the funding that helped us through this project, and it has also shown us that not to shy away from other incentives, opportunities that might arise in the future. So this is my end of my presentation. I know it's a bit brief, but I didn't want to, I wanted to keep it not too much technical.
Aurelino, short and sweet, and I can tell you that I hope you're inspiring also the audience we have with us. I think essentially what you've said is, and the advice you're giving to the business people involved in today's session is essentially take the plunge, get in contact with both MCST and Malta Enterprise, see what the funding opportunities they both offer, and see whether any of your potential future projects could in some way or another be funded through one of the existing schemes. And thank you so much, Lino. Thanks for your insights. And of course, thank you all. I would like to thank, of course, the first 4 speakers for also keeping to the time we had originally given you. Before we proceed to the next section, I would like to share with you a research funding matrix that has been kindly prepared by MCST and Malta Enterprise. Essentially over here, and we will be also sharing this matrix after today's session to all the participants. Where here you can see different streams of funding that both entities can offer in a very concise way. You can immediately go for the type of funding you be more suitable for your needs, and you can see from the details offered here by both entities on the type of project, on the type also of project in terms of, for example, technology readiness levels they can offer, the type of research they would cover in terms of funding, whether they would cover non-collaborative or collaborative type of projects, and also the type of assistance they can offer, and also the type of entity that would be covered through this funding. I'll very briefly leave the screen for anyone's attention, but as I told you, we will be sharing this grid after today's session. Immediately, I will have to stop sharing now. I'll immediately also launch a very short questionnaire. It's a poll to all the attendees, and if the panelists wish to also answer these questions, we'll allow 1 minute. You have 3 questions to answer, and then we will be presenting the results at the end of today's session. Basically, questions are in relation on whether you were aware of the schemes presented today, whether your organization has ever participated in externally funded research projects, and if so, how many, and the barriers basically to participate in these projects. We'll leave it open for another minute. And of course, I also remind the audience to ask any questions and to place any questions in the Q&A section below. Okay, we can immediately now move on to some questions to some of the people who haven't spoken yet, and I would like to get Professor Andres Schwierep involved here. Professor Andres Schwierep, in his capacity as Science Policy Officer at the Chamber of Scientists, but Professor Schwierep is also an Associate Professor in the Department of Physics at the University of Malta. And I would like to immediately ask you, Andre, in your role as part of academia, how can you foresee getting academics more engaged and more linked up with industry, so that the research, of course, being carried out by academia can be more relevant to the needs of local industry and basically contribute to the enhancing of future potential of local industry? And what is also, if you can give us some snippet on what is being done by academics in this regard. Andre.
Thank you, Andre. Thanks everyone. It's been a very, very interesting session so far, and thanks to the speakers, especially from the private companies as well as Malta Enterprise and MCST. It gives a very, very well-rounded perspective. And if I may, I mean the biggest issue, and this is something which we've discussed in the past as well, the biggest issue I see with sort of research, disconnect between researchers and industry in this country, is that we don't often know what the other side is doing or what the other side is interested in. And there is a bit of a disconnect in terms of timescales as well. Researchers think in terms of years, sometimes decades, if you're a physicist, whereas companies tend to think in terms of months or even weeks in some cases. And in this case, it's encouraging to see, especially the new funding streams which were announced, at least informally announced earlier, including, for example, this research excellence funding stream by MCST. Because what that will help do is kind of narrow this gap in expectations by helping researchers find funding for the bits which cannot be funded by industry before that research becomes more relevant to industry. I think more moving beyond that, or moving beyond the funding streams, what we need is more events of this kind to make sure that we know what the other side is thinking, and we know what else is going on in this country, both in terms of research and innovation in industry, to put them together. This is perhaps how I would approach that.
And
sorry, and in terms of, yeah, sorry.
Sure. Go ahead, Andre.
I was going to say, in terms of research that's going on, because I forgot to address that point. I mean, at the moment, if one visits the university campus, there's a massive expansion project going on, because there's a lot of work being undertaken in basically everything. So in physics, we are looking at using microwave radiation for imaging and cancer treatment. So medical imaging and cancer treatment. There's sustainable living complex, which is being built a couple of 100 meters that way, and that is exclusively meant for research in how to make our buildings and our way of life more sustainable. The Faculty of ICT is very active in cybersecurity, in software development, and blockchain, and most other things. And it's not just us, of course. I mean, I only see a restricted part of the university here, but there is a lot that's going on, and unfortunately, we don't often transmit everything that we say that we're doing to the industry. So I welcome being part of this panel to at least start breaking that barrier down.
No, I concur with you, Andre. We tend to feel from the business side now that at times even the efforts from the university side is a bit fragmented. It's very much faculty-based, and I feel, and I think, and I believe that there should be at least a centralized place where industry can go directly. I know that there is the knowledge transfer office, and there is the incubator as well, and the takeoff. But at times it's very much relationship based on the type of relationship the person in industry has with a particular lecturer, and I feel that we need to centralize this form of relationship with the university in terms of research, and I think you would tend to concur as well. Love to know what you are doing in terms of research at the university, and of course see whether we would be able to tap into those as well from the business communities.
I mean, what's interesting, what you said is that it kind of characterizes academics. Yeah, we're unmanageable, and we like to do our own thing, which is perhaps why it's hard to centralize. But it's a very good point, and it is not an easy problem to solve, but it's something which I think, again, the Malta Chamber, working with the Chamber of Scientists, could help kind of give a broader perspective and transmit to industry better what we're doing in a more centralized fashion. If I'm permitted to advertise my words, as it were, one thing which we're working on as well at the moment is cybersecurity related, and it's basically using quantum physics to safeguard telecommunications. So even things as bizarre as quantum physics have technological applications nowadays, and there are very good reasons for doing that, and there are very good reasons for doing that here. So that's something which I hope you'll be hearing about in the very near future. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. I would like to bring in now, we have invited MEP Cyrus Enger, and I'll be bringing him in and promoting him as a panelist. Basically, would love to have that European element and European insights also from the latest MEP who was appointed within the European Parliament. Mr. Enger, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, Sander.
Hi. Thanks for joining us. I hope you have found the session interesting so far. For the audience, we also wanted to involve MEP Enger because he, amongst other things, is a substitute member of the European Parliament's Committee on Industry, Research and Energy. And the question to you, MEP Enger, is basically with reference to the new EU multi-annual financial framework. Malta, as you know, has traditionally not benefited, especially the business community, the local business community, has never really benefited from direct R&D funding, for example, if we take as an example the Horizon programs, and similarly other research-based funded EU programs. Commissioner von der Leyen has specifically said that the new MFF will be focusing on 3 main areas, which are research, digitalization, and also sustainability in terms of the green economy. So, of course, research will be a crucial point moving forward with funding. In your point of view, what should we as a country, as Malta, be doing in order not to lose, of course, time in building the necessary capacity in order to absorb more of these direct funds? And by all means, if you wish to contribute to any other of the points raised by the previous speaker, on me. Or is yours?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Andrea, for organizing and inviting me to this webinar this afternoon. It's a very important topic on funding. It is something that I have worked on for quite some time, since my graduation back in the university years, so I'll be discussing even that later on. Basically, before going on to direct funding, let me shed some light on indirect funding, and therefore funds in relation to the multi-annual financial framework and the Commission's resilience and recovery instruments following the pandemic. Malta, this time round, has managed to secure 162 million euros dedicated to R&D expenditure. So therefore, this means that we have had an increase of 68 million when compared to the package of the previous 7 years. So I'm happy to see that we have that increase, and that the European Commission and the negotiations that the Maltese government had with the other member states and the Commission resulted in an increase in R&D. It's something that we must continue focusing on, and this also leads, and I'm happy to see that even in Malta back home, basically we do now have a ministry that is particularly targeting research, development and innovation, which is something that we never had before, and I think that this is a step in the right direction. However, when speaking on direct funds or of direct funds from the European Commission, such as those tied to the Horizon 2020 program, while I believe that MCST, MUSEC, Malta Enterprise are doing an extremely good job in raising awareness of the funding opportunities that exist, and they also help organizations to tap into these funds, I think that the amount of applications from Malta still remains rather low, and I think that this is something that we must address, because it represents a missed opportunity in our R&D strategy as a country. So if I had to think of what the major issues revolving around this slow and low uptake of direct EU funds from our industry, but I wouldn't just say our industry, because it is the same thing for our NGOs, for instance. It is the same thing for organizations all across the board in our country that tend not to go for these funding opportunities. So I believe that firstly, one of the major issues is that there is not enough awareness, although as I mentioned, Malta Enterprise, MUSEC, MCST are continuously coming up with advertising strategies, let's say, to bring more awareness on these topics. Still awareness is a bit low, and I think that this is where maybe the Chamber of Commerce might play a crucial role in raising more awareness about funding opportunities to its members. I know that you do this to a certain extent, but I believe that you are the people that are at the end of the day in contact continuously with the industry in Malta, whether in all sectors, let's say. So I think that organizations such as the Chamber could play a crucial role in this. A second stumbling block, I believe, is the highly bureaucratic nature of applications for small businesses, because let's face it, most of the organizations in Malta can be described as micro or small businesses, especially when compared to the European reality, where we see much bigger organizations tapping these funds. So I think that the bureaucracy that entails and revolves around these applications might be one of the biggest stumbling blocks in reality. As I said earlier on, I've been working on EU funding since I graduated from university in 2008. I had started working at the Planning and Priorities Coordination Division, PPCD basically, on indirect funding. Then I had moved to MUSEC, where we had founded the new funding department at MUSEC that helps a lot organizations to tap funding. In 2013, then I joined the private secretariat of the ministry that was taking care of EU funds. For the first time, we had a ministry dedicated to EU funding. And I think that when, and now obviously I'm here at the European Parliament, part of the ITRA committee, it does not take care directly of funding. So we need to make that clear. However, obviously it gives an input to the committees that work on funding, especially the REGI committee. Obviously, I want to try and address some of these issues that I have heard all throughout my working and professional life with regards to the stumbling blocks that Maltese organizations find. So, as I said, the major issue we have is bureaucracy, and I think that this stems from the fact that we have a European Union that many at times takes one-size-fits-all approach to funding. And this is what we need to fight, I believe, as a small member state, since it leads to a number of funding opportunities that are not open to small companies, to small organizations, and to small countries. I must make reference to the EFSI fund, for instance, the European Fund for Strategic Investment that was issued during the time that the president of the European Commission was Juncker, the so-called Juncker plan, which ended up having no Maltese or little Maltese organizations and businesses benefiting from that fund, because it was impossible for small organizations to access that kind of funding. Apart from that, we're seeing the same thing at this moment in time, for instance, with a number of funds relating to the LIFE project during the pandemic, where the European Commission wants to help out NGOs that work in the environmental field, for instance, to tap funding to survive this difficult period. However, just to see and to realize how the European Commission thinks, these funds are open to those organizations, to those NGOs that employ at least 10 employees. And now, I do not think that in Malta we have any NGO, not only on the environment, but any other NGO that employs more than one person. We're very lucky if we have at least one person employed in an NGO. So therefore, we need to focus, I think, our efforts as a country on fighting this one-size-fits-all issue and reality at the European level. Because let's face it, the procedure to apply for Horizon 2020, for instance, is pretty straightforward and follows a step-based approach. And it doesn't take too long to receive the confirmation from the European Commission on whether the application was a successful one or not. It takes usually 5 months. So those are the issues I believe that we need to tackle. First of all, awareness raising, more awareness raising in our country, maybe direct awareness raising to businesses in order for them to know exactly what is available for them, and at the end of the day, work in order to make their ideas come true. Because at the end of the day, I believe that we're a country of very hard workers and very ambitious people. We have bright ideas, and now we need to turn those bright ideas into reality, and that could be done through funding. From my end, I am willing to help out in any way possible, whether it's advice on funding opportunities, or else even, why not, help out in some funding applications, since we have the experience as an office when it comes to funding applications as well. You can also count on my office to support you, as many a times when applying for funding, you would need some support letters from government, ministries, members of the European Parliament. Feel free to contact my office. We will definitely lend a hand wherever we can. Thank you once again for inviting us to this webinar, and I hope to have many more of these opportunities to discuss funding opportunities in the near future.
Thank you so much, Cyrus. And may I say that I definitely agree with the points you were raising in terms of raising awareness. This is, of course, part of the activities we're organizing as a Chamber of Commerce in collaboration with other entities in Malta. I think Malta at times suffers from a bit of a silo mentality, and that type of mentality where there's too much fragmentation between different entities. And I think this type of collaborative sessions are needed so that the people out there can have a broader visualization, call it what, of all the different funding schemes that are available to them. And again, I can totally also agree with you on the issue of one size fits all at the European level. Of course, that's where you and your colleagues in the European Parliament come in to make sure that Malta's voice is always heard, and that the European Parliament, but more so the European Commission, realizes that Malta's size is it is, and that any direct funding streams need to take our size into consideration. Before I proceed any further with the questions, some other questions to the panelists from my side, I wanted to check whether there are any questions from the audience. Doesn't seem like it. Okay, maybe very quickly, just a short question to James and to Karl. James, on the Fusion program, there is this perception at times out there that that Fusion tends to attract more projects led by academia rather than industry. How can we help companies to come up with more successful proposals in the long term? Because I think as you've rightly presented earlier on, Fusion could be a very attractive program for a number of ideas out there. So how can we change that?
Thank you, Andre. Perhaps also latching on to what MP Herrera was talking about. It is difficult to access research funding. It is competitive, and it is hard, not only in Malta, but anywhere else one could look at. And as he was mentioning as well, sometimes it's a bit of a maze to negotiate when it comes to, for example, accessing EU funds. We do have specific support measures on accessing EU funds in terms of support on proposal writing, not only through our team, and that advice is free, but also at times we run schemes which are particularly dedicated to applicants getting expert advice from external parties so that they can submit high quality applications. Then turning to your question, when it comes to Fusion, Fusion is open to a variety of entities, including private sector. We tend to have more applications and more of a success rate from academia, so I'm not going to beat around the bush on that. But one does need to bear in mind that our academic entities in Malta are essentially powerhouses of research and powerhouses of application writing. They have offices in place which are staffed with people who know how to put proposals together. So it is never going to be easy in that respect. TDP, the Technology Development Programme under Fusion, provides for collaborative research. So certainly the private sector, together with the University of Malta or MCST or other public entities, can join forces and hence are not in competition. But in applications which are being led by private entities, and they are in competition with our public entities, one needs to bear in mind that there is support available within MCST, and you can certainly come to us. I mean, we cannot write the applications for you or give you technical advice, obviously, because the entities will be tapping into national funds, essentially. However, we can certainly guide you, align your ideas to the programs, and get you as well prepared as possible. I mean, they are competitive calls, but what I would like to say is, do not be discouraged and actually be encouraged to apply, because once you do it the first time, you will get feedback, even if you're not successful. There will be lessons learned. There will be one-to-one sessions with our staff to ensure that you understand the feedback, even if you're not successful. And that is a learning opportunity. If one never tries, you're not going to gain the experience which has been created within, let's say, the public organizations. Once you break into managing an application, you also tend to have a better chance of getting repeated funding because of your experience. And I think from the case study today, Matthew was presenting Altern's case. I believe that as a result of the first project, he then had another 2 projects which were funded, which he mentioned. One of them today, Shape Lamp, and there was, I believe, another one. It's really breaking the cycle, and we're certainly available to help. We can arrange one-to-one meetings, and in the future, as I mentioned, there will be new programs such as the Technology Development Program Light, which will see the availability of being able to participate as a sole entity from the private sector. And there will be some sort of streaming exercise to ensure that private sector engagement is ascertained in these programs. But definitely come to us, because we're very keen to help out and make sure that you're as best placed and as competitive as possible in comparison with everyone else. Thank you.
James, and I think that's the crucial take-home point that I want to also bring forward to the audience, is basically get in contact with the entities present here, Malta Enterprise, MCST, us if need be, and we can then direct you to the right source of funding. Karl, before we close off, can I maybe widen a bit the scope of the discussion? What are, and if I can ask you, what are Malta Enterprise and what is Malta Enterprise strategy in attracting new foreign direct investment that has significant R&D potential, and how can we really do that in terms of the assistance offered to potential foreign investors with the right R&D capabilities, which can then create a cluster with local companies around them?
Okay, we'll try to address that in a short.
In a very short, yes. We're running late, actually.
Well, as I think we can all see around us, it's the time for attracting large-scale setups is a bit beyond us now. The availability of space is what it is in the island, so we cannot keep trying to attract large setups which are based on volume of employees. So we must look at quality. So I think in that we can all agree, and that quality will come usually from more high-level jobs, more jobs doing research, more jobs doing innovation, and so that's a general strategy, I would say, on the type of FDIs we would like to attract and the FDIs that we approach nowadays. As I alluded into my presentation, we have had a reasonably success in attracting startups which are based on research, which are in their development phase. Usually the make or break is whether they can at least find an attachment in Malta. So they might not find the right resources they need immediately, but at least they need something which they can build up. So they might not have the specific knowledge available from university when it comes to, for example, artificial intelligence, but they know that there is an artificial intelligence competence which exists at university, which then they can at least attach to. So that is important. I would say it was impossible to attract something which is totally non-existent. So that is, I think, one of the main aspects which you consider when attracting new FDIs. In fact, it doesn't show much, but we do work very closely with university, with specific departments, and a lot of our companies are also working, especially these new startups, working directly with university in helping the students, build the competence they require. I would say the areas where we're seeing more interest recently are biotech technologies, artificial intelligence, some areas of fintech, and obviously there is also advanced manufacturing, but that's always tied to manufacturing. So that's more building competence on what already exists locally.
So thanks, Karl. Before we proceed to the conclusions, first of all, I would like to thank all the participants again. I don't know if anyone wanted to have any further remarks or wish to point out anything else. If not, we'll immediately. Oh yes, I'm seeing Andre. Go ahead, Andre.
Very, very quickly, because I like something that Karl just said. I'd just like to use it to draw attention. So he said that sometimes companies that come here not because they find exactly what they're looking for, the right skills, but they find that they can build on what there is. The only thing I want to say from the perspective of the Chamber of Scientists, that is exactly why it makes sense to invest in fundamental research, because that's how you build those skills. That's how you build that knowledge base. So yes, sometimes we might struggle to explain exactly why we want to do a particular piece of research in terms of its applications. But the skills that we build, the people that we train in doing that will eventually be useful to attract new kinds of business. This is all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Andre. And once again, thank you all for, I think, providing a lot of insights today. I know we've tried to pack a lot of information in less than an hour and a half. I think we're running a bit late. I'll immediately share with you the results of the poll questions we had earlier. Just give me a second. I'll quickly share with you the results. For the first question, which was basically whether you're aware of the funding schemes we presented today, 55% of the participants said no, they weren't aware of the schemes we presented today. So that's quite interesting. Hopefully, type of events will keep on raising more awareness. Even more interesting is that close to 3/4 of the participants said that they had never participated in any externally funded research project. So I'm imagining either they've never done any form of research or they've been funding these type of projects directly themselves. And only the remaining basically percentage, 28%, have participated in an externally researched project. And for the last questions, basically the barriers to participate in current research related projects, we can see that 21% said that the funding programs are still not clear to me, so they might require some more information after today's sessions. 21% said that the present programs do not address the needs of their company. 28% also said that they don't have the adequate human resources to undertake the projects, and another 24% said that the organization does not usually engage in research. So maybe it's something to consider for the future. And with with this, basically, I would like to conclude today's session. I once again thank all the participants. Very, very quickly, I would like to remind those attendees of our upcoming events. On the 16th of March, the Chamber's HR Committee, in collaboration with the Public Health Response Team of the Ministry of Health, will be organizing an information session to update the business community on new discharge policies for workers who test positive for COVID-19 and the new state standards to apply on rapid testing together with preventive measures for COVID. So this would be very much of interest to any HR managers and company owners who are facing difficulties in this respect. On the 18th of March, in collaboration with HSBC, we'll be organizing an interesting webinar on the post-COVID outlook and economic outlook with the participation of 2 international speakers from the HSBC group. The event basically will be focusing on topical themes such as how will the global economy perform in 2021? Will we see the expected boom in service demand many are expecting, and the implications on that recovery will have on policymakers across the world and the financial market. And last but not least, very important, point out especially to our members still with us today, on the 24th of March, we have our Chamber Annual General Meeting at 5 o'clock, which will include the participation this year of the President of the Republic, Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition, who will be giving their views during a discussion during our AGM. The AGM will also be completely virtual for the first time and will be followed by the start of our internal elections to elect a new Chamber Council for the next 2 years. And also electronic voting will be used for the time. With this, I conclude today's session. Once again, thank all the participants and all the speakers for their great insights, and in particular, big thanks goes to our co-organizers today, MCST, Malta Enterprise and Chamber, and the Chamber of Scientists for their constant help throughout. I urge all the members to look into these funding opportunities and contact us and contact the entities present today. Keep updated with any developments on the Chamber social media outlets, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, Malta Chamber portal, and our intranet, the Members Gateway. With this, I thank you all for staying with us till now, fast approaching the 1.5 hour mark, and I wish you a great day, and looking forward to other events on the subject. Thanks once again. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.